crazy? I was just gonna tell you that your fly is down. Manager, this is the greatest day of my life!
In the background, you are listening to Ocean Man by Ween, a band spearheaded by guitarist Dean Ween and vocalist Gene Ween usually. This is a song that you probably know, and by the sound of it, you would expect the band behind it to make lots of similar music. As it turns out, that expectation would be incredibly wrong. Let's do a quick little experiment. If you don't have headphones, you're about to listen to hell, but otherwise, I'm gonna play a few songs in each of your ears and your goal is to guess which one's by Ween, okay? Go! How am I fooling? They're all Ween. It's the same guys, and listening to them for the past 3 months has turned my brain into toast.
This is how Ween blows your mind or whatever.
Disclaimer, I've never done drugs. If you're a long-time watcher, you might believe I have, but the hardest drug I've taken is like probably ibuprofen. This is usually because my favorite music genre is psychedelic rock, as you can tell from the one psychedelic rock song outside of the Mollusk in my current album top 10. But the Mollusk does hold Ocean Man as its 13th track, a song that statistically has about 10 times more views than Ween's second most popular tune. Naturally, you'd start listening to Ween with this album as I did, and hopefully you'll be like me and end up making the best mistake that you've ever made. Whoop-de-doo, content creator talking about expectations being broken? Never heard that one in a video essay, I bet. But the Mollusk does truly break them if your prior experience with Ween is Ocean Man and maybe the Loop the Loop song, because the tone you're expecting completely shatters when you listen to the first 10 seconds of the first track in the Mollusk, titled I'm Dancing in the Show Tonight. The most amusing part of this to me is that even if Ocean Man wasn't as massively popular as it is, this would set you up to expect something that the album isn't.
Tonight, showtime now is getting near, and I'm getting scared.
The cartoony voices and production quality are immediately apparent while getting across Ween's more playful attitude. It sets up some manner of stage for the album by feeling introductory, and being that the album is sort of a concept piece, this ends up working exceptionally well if you are like me and come from Ocean Man's appearance in a narrative film.
I can hardly wait to be dancing in the show tonight.
In fact, the entire tone of the song ends up making the whiplash from expectation to reality even more striking if you come for Ocean Man. This sounds like it could genuinely inspire SpongeBob SquarePants. You can picture SpongeBob and Patrick having some similar conversation, and Ween naturally didn't intend for this since they didn't know SpongeBob would even exist. This is just Gene playing with a surprisingly wide vocal range, so they just got very lucky while putting this track on the record. Now that your mind's full of SpongeBob and not music, Ween can really start working their magic. The Mollusk's titular track really begins to show the true colors of Ween's music. The lyrics make allusions to eldritch creatures, and the production shows variety and mastery, giving the interesting synths and the multitude of wind instruments that are perfectly mixed. But I believe the first psychedelic track comes in afterwards, with Polka Dot Tail, which sounds like a poem directed at children, but the music is constructed of haunting held elements. The lyrics are delivered sluggishly, and a very slow 1/3 time signature is used to transmit a sense of apprehension. It's also all coded in this vibrato that makes the song feel like something you can only hear underwater.
Help me.
It's like a little disturbing, so it takes you by surprise when you hear the next song is just a blown out pop rock song with a funky guitar solo down the middle. This is a thing that the Mollusk likes doing. We've seen heavy psychedelic tracks with shapely music that may appear comedic on occasion. It continues like this with Mutilated Lips and The Blarney Stone, the next two songs in the record.
You wee bitty fuck, if I pull out the claymore, your shit out of luck.
One is a slow love song about getting high, and the other one is a simulation of a bar where pirates are singing. One really begins with I lick my brain in silence, and the other one with get off my ass, you weepity fuck. I remember when I first listened to this album that I was working on what was at the time the biggest project I had done for the channel, the Malcolm in the Middle episode ranking, which is now only a fifth of the biggest project, so but I just had to stop working that night when Mutilated Lips caught my attention.
I lick my brain in silence. Mutilated lips give a kiss on the wrist of the worm-like tips of tentacles expanding in my mind.
I couldn't understand the music without giving it my full focus, something which hadn't happened until then and hasn't happened since. This album also contains two melancholic tracks here, almost as if to keep you on your toes. It's Gonna Be Alright and Cold Blows the Wind are some of the most tender songs to be sandwiched between a song about pirates getting drunk and
I cannot say this word in the video.
woman, and one about a magical eel that telepathically communicates with a man lost at sea. The vocals in the tender songs are so soothing compared to the deep and heavy ones in the Golden Eel. The guitar solos that have lined most of the rock tracks in the album are nowhere to be found outside of the very loud and present solo lining up the later half of Golden Eel. You see what I'm getting at? The Mollusk is an album that swings widely in its genres. The tracklist is carefully designed to set up and destroy expectations throughout, and because of this, the upcoming 12th track in the album actually managed to destroy my brain and my ass. Something which only happened before that one time I slipped in my heelys outside the cinema when I was 6. The two songs preceding it are Pink Eye and Waving My Dick in the Wind. That's one instrumental with lyrical finesse unlike anything you've ever seen, and a comedy song about penis waving and an old man dancing because he's a real good dancer.
I'm waving my dick in the wind. If it all goes right, I'll be in your arms tonight. But I'm waving my dick in the wind.
And then you get Buckingham Green. I was not the kind to have favorite songs before I heard this track, but this track really is an all-in-one package of why Ween is fantastic. The slow build-up at the start with the calming guitar melody is masterful, as you hear the story about a cult built of children awaiting some sort of deity to come bless them after sacrificing one of the children's parents in an undisclosed ritual. Then, as the guitar takes focus and the music slowly wraps up from a simple guitar melody to an electric one with longer notes, the gap is bridged into this. Yeah, this might be one of the best solos of all time, but it would not be half as effective if a minute later the familiar drums of Ocean Man didn't begin. You're telling me these two songs were put together in the tracklist, the two best songs in the album, maybe the two best songs in Ween's discography, and they are a far cry from each other? You go from the darkest and most epic track ever to a cheery song with bright guitars that also has a very simple musical composition. The elements it uses lean closer to pop and are easily pleasing to the ears, and the lyrics pertain to this man who understands the wonder and horrors that prior songs in the album have depicted. This is a man who is familiar with the world of the ocean, and the vocals call out to him pleading to be taken to explore the terrifying scenery, as its barbarity is nothing but another part of its beauty. You can interpret this as similar to some people's accounts on being high, talking about their good and bad trips, the ones that make them doubt their love, the ones that have them eager to act, and the Ocean Man is this figurative idea whose companionship can make all of the terror and bliss bewitching and magnificent. The two tracks really get across things you cannot understand with one listen, and things you'll understand within seconds. This isn't an expectation being surpassed, this is natural behavior of humans that is being toyed with, and that truthfully broke my mind. The last song in the album, She Wanted to Leave, is another mellow and sad track about unrequited love. One that has almost gotten me to cry more than once, but mostly just cause I really can't believe such a good record was put out. I still don't know if the singer loving her for so long since she was a child means anything I should be scared about, but Ween's got a whole song about a serial killer who wears the skin of his victims, so my answer is most likely yes, the character's weird about kids. And the album ends simply with a slower reprise of the first track, bringing the album together cohesively. What proceeded for me was sitting for about half an hour at 4 AM thinking to myself, wowee. I remember I had a good place to sit back then, but stuff happened and now my shoulders are forever in pain. Look, Ween makes such a fantastic impression with this album, but the reality is not all their music is as accessible, neither is all of their music this unique. The Mollusk is something special due to the fact that Ween was at this point in their career trying to fuse their own crazy music style with more commercially appealing tracks, something that hadn't worked as spectacularly in the past and proceeded not to work afterwards as well, probably because Ween just let themselves be them when creating this one. That means most of their discography doesn't blow your mind on its own. You've got to consider their work as a whole. This album has several tones and styles being handled, a theme that permeates their entire discography, so knowing myself, I tried their second most popular album. After all, it's the highest rated in many sites, so I decided it couldn't hurt to try. And Quebec did not achieve a portion of what the Mollusk did to my mind. Although in future listens I found more appreciation for particular tracks in it, on a first listen, only a handful stood out to me. Soloft, Transdermal Celebration, Happy Colored Marbles, The Fuck Jam, and the last two tracks in the album that deliver a similar punch to the one I just mentioned, The Argus and If You Could Save Yourself. This album also contains Tried and True, a very popular song that failed to stand out to me the same way most of the Mollusk does. It is above all more accessible and less unique, but it also feels more earnest and mature, the same way most of this album does. Particularly I Don't Want It, unlike the music in the Mollusk that talks about loves that don't feel personal, there's a real story behind these tracks. You can feel the pain behind the lyrics and guitar solos, which is fitting given band member Gene was going through a divorce at the time, leading to all sorts of sounds, including some hazy and unshapely tracks like Alcan Road.
My passion
she came to me, I fell back down, realized.
I recommend you don't skip this album if you want to get into Ween, because it may not fuck your mind, but it's a great and consistent listen. My favorite is Transformo Celebration, and if you're only interested in the ones I name dropped, you can never stop listening to the fuck jam, so be wary of that. Happy Color Marbles and So Many People in the Neighborhood are some of the first examples you hear from Ween that feel strange. Pink Eye was somewhat like this, but their sentiments of something being bad in a good way just permeates these tracks. Jumpscare warning. Is also one in a set of what I named the demigod tracks, spanning several songs from different albums, often talking about some sort of god, creature, or apparition. This tends to be highlights in any given album, though not every album has one. Ween has this logo depicting a creature called the Booknish, a supposed god or creature or apparition that commanded the duo to produce music, another indicator of Ween's willingness to discuss these sort of eldritch nightmares in its positives and negatives. Part of listening to this band is always waiting to see how they'll surprise me even in their less impressive records through one of these tracks, and the variety of their discography certainly helps blow your mind in a more pleasant way than the earlier one. They'll simply surprise you with the range. It's impossible not to find something you'll dig in their discography. These two albums have a lot less variety, which makes them unique. White Pepper is an unexpected favorite of mine, because although the only track in it that feels dreamy to me is Ice Castles, the rest of the tracklist is actually fantastic regardless of its less experimental nature. Not to say some tracks like Exactly Where I'm At, Back to Base and The Grove don't have parts of what makes Ween such a memorable band. They still use those distortions and catchy guitars that Quebec and Mollusk have, but the rest of the tracklist is expertly produced in its simplicity, making for a really fun listen, although not as intricate.
Please believe I'm only traveling.
This album includes Bananas and Blow, which is also very upbeat and ocean themed, so I'd call it Ocean Man's strange twin. However, there's a song that fits that description better, a song which you will not find on Spotify, so you're gonna have to wait for me to tell you about it. No, for real, you see this tracklist? Let me just... There, this album is perfect now. 12 Golden Country Greats is probably my least favorite record from the band, as it is, as the name implies, a collection of a great 10 country songs. They did make the other two, they just aren't in the album, though I do enjoy Mr. Richard Smoker and Help Me Scrape the Mucus of My Brain.
And if you really love me, baby, help me scrape the mucus off my brain.
Wait a second, is that... This album establishes something that you might have had a hard time accepting before. Country can be good. You see number 2 in my top 10, that's a country rock genre bending piece. And also that whatever Ween touches ends up being at least a fun listen. They have this skill at grabbing something and working off it into a new track, whether that's a bunch of country songs, the slight inspirations they take from other artists, or when they try to make music specifically to sell for the use in TV or movies. La Cucaracha is often regarded as Ween's worst, but it's not half bad even if you can tell tracks like Fiesta were made exclusively in hopes of someone picking it up and featuring it in a show. You know, after they made most of their bank and popularity as a band from showing up in SpongeBob once. There is good material in here, but different approaches to music creation, the likes of Gino and Diner, and a general lack of interest is fundamental to this record, leading to greats like Object, to which I alluded to earlier, Man and Woman, or Your Party.
I can tell you in my answer if you listen, man and woman.
These are the good old greatness from the band, some with disturbing lyrics and many having fun and lighthearted approaches unlike some of their older records. Sort of excluding Lullaby and Object because the latter is messed up.
You're just a piece of me, and I am a butcher. Paste you across my body.
And I love every part of it. Ween's got me sympathizing for the guy who makes human skin suits, feeling relieved because they found her sweater. I'll give you a moment to compute what that means, but around tracks 5 to 10 you get tons of variety with little of interest. Ween had made variety many times before. The whole theme of this chapter of video is showcasing how volatile and skilled the Weens are, capable of pegging any genre. But the music here sometimes feels uninspired. This is easy to see when you return to their first record signed to a label, Chocolate and Cheese. Chocolate and Cheese is unique because it's kinda hard to find online due to the cover featuring a naked lady with boobs large enough to look like fake cups given her tight outfit. She has a belt with the Ween logo, and the image is based on the cover of a 1974 Playboy cover, which I can show. Point is, YouTube doesn't let you find it, so instead you get the one time Ween made a song about gays for South Park, which is pretty nice considering CNC has a song called the HIV song where the band just says AIDS and plays a nice little tune behind it. AIDS. You'll notice that among their hit buster tracks like Freedom of 76, Voodoo Lady and Baby Bitch, you'll find another two types of songs, where these are buoyant or casual tracks, you get songs like A Tear for Eddie that show the extent of Dean's guitar skills in the amazing detail we got sight into during Buckingham Green. And the other types of songs lean more towards Ween's earlier work, like a song about a kid asking his mother if he'll die because he's got spinal meningitis. Oh, the hurt. Funny story, Ween performed at a Conan O'Brien show in 1985 playing a track from this record, I Can't Put My Finger On It. And they got banned from the entire NBC because of it. You wanna guess why? Well, it's not because they brought in a belly dancer, or because they played a song that had not a quarter of the appeal as the buoyant ones I mentioned, or because Gene decided to put on this great outfit that looks ridiculous next to Dean's normal ass getup. No, the deal is that they played some shawarma stock footage behind them without permission. And these kinds of silly messes and bad songs that feel silly or egregious in a good way is the third way in which Ween blows your mind. Let me introduce you to Brown. If you've been into Ween's earlier records, you'll find that they weren't very concerned with making music to sell. They simply enjoy their craft and deliver some stuff of varying degrees of quality, yet often with a theme that is certainly not common. Their music was brown. Brown's means music that is bad, but in a good way. It has imperfections, it shows the personality of the creators, it's not made with top-notch recording equipment, it's just music that maybe is good, and if it sucks, we're just gonna love it for it. And they made 3 whole albums of this, maybe more. They have put out some of their earlier tapes which are even more brown. And it's not poop related. This has been explicitly stated because brown does sound like poop, so let's clear up that it's not poop, it's brown. God, Ween, Satan, the Pot, and Fresh Guava is the name of this trilogy, but it's difficult to talk about because brown can mean anything from to
Do you make guacamole? Yes, we do make guacamole. Okay, I would like a side of guacamole, my tostitos. I like to dip the tostitos in the guacamole. Can I get a basket?
and even yeah, I laughed for about 10 minutes straight the first time I heard this one too. There will be no heads and no toes to this madness, but it will also be kinda rad simply by how unapologetic and raw it is, added to the fact that Ween is just great at creating music by default. Of these 3 records, I'd say The Pot is my favorite, God, Ween, Satan second, and Fresh Guava is my least and second least favorite in Ween's discography, but I'm sure you'll have a different opinion if you get to this point in your Ween listening journey. Guava does have one of the demigod tracks, Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy, and also Push the Little Daisies, but these songs are the standard type, while their brown stuff here is a miss for me.
Push the little daisies and make 'em come up. Push the little daisies and make 'em come up. Sometimes I know.
You can compare that to the Pot's brown outings that are incorporated as just another element in otherwise blue pieces. Look at Rights to the Ways, and how it's using this cheap-ass viola synthesizer that would sound bad on its own, but the usage is pretty neat, and then they laugh instead of finishing the song on the recorded album, which is just fantastic. The song Fat Lenny sounds like Carmen sang it, so that's funny.
Fat lady's gon' lick the slack off a windowsill, and I said now, fat lady's gon' jump up.
LMLYP stands for what you'd expect it to, and it's just a funky track as you can tell from just the first few seconds of that. Birthday Boy is loud and infamous for that one time Gene got too high to perform live to the point his bandmates left him singing this one alone, which is funny because the lyrics are somewhat fitting.
And I don't know if I'll be okay.
And Squelch the Weasel is the first demigod track in my eyes. Morning Glory is probably my least favorite Ween song, but it's so damn brown, it's turning black. I'll keep it short for the sake of your eardrums, only you get to choose if you want to destroy them. But yeah, these albums are a lot more about hearing them yourself and seeing what shade of brown you like best. Once you really get brown music, because it can initially be hard to grasp until you get the sound, you'll find Ween blowing your mind in a completely different way. These records are filled with tracks that don't feel like music, yet still are enjoyable like it. The way their more popular records hoards only tiny snippets of their brown music so that prepares you to truly open your mind to the crazy and specific sounds they used earlier in their career. And I think that's impressive. It takes some real talent to win people over to your shenanigans. I should know, I've been doing this for 10 years and a random 14-year-old can beat me in about 3 weeks by doing Minecraft Let's Plays. I sure am happy about this!
I managed to find an app.
But once you get to this point, you're really off to the deep end. You're into this, guys. You need more, so you tune to the songs they didn't even put out. Because guess what? It's like really fucking good.
I don't mean to be so insolent, but you know it's because I love
You
you.
see that? That's Thin Lizzy right there, except Thin Lizzy didn't make it. Oh, you can't fall into the voice of backing down to kill your territory. This so-called Someday is one of my favorites. The magic is in how the live version you get Gino singing like a goofy before he gets hit by a small rock over the head, or when he learned he wouldn't be in 2002's magical mirror store in Mickey Mouse.
Someday you will hear me sing a love song.
And then the album version's like
Tuesday is pizza day.
this song made me want pizza every Tuesday. Honestly, their Shinoa compilation record is filled with great tracks, such as Did You See Me, Transitions, and The Rift. These songs were relatively popular demos that were previously unreleased but often a hit live, so they compiled them and put it in a record that forms part of their discography. But due to the original demos of these tracks being put online, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of unreleased tracks from these. Remember when I said Ocean Man had like a sister song that never got released? Have a listen.
Take it easy. Walk with a light step, baby. Catch a breezy. Live amongst the life forms in your day.
This is Kim Smalls. It's just an absolute bop from start to end that stands out because it really feels like something that fit right with the Mollusk. Similarly, you can find the 2 tracks that complete the count to grades. Other demos I love include I'll Wait, Albino Sunburned Girl, Coco, Little Miss Mandy, Wash Me Down, It Freaks Me Out, Low Rolls, and Love Came Down, as well as Auto Renee, Ambrosia Pali. Yeah, that's basically an album worth of unreleased stuff that didn't make it into records, but somehow got online, giving us even more Ween to get into. The deal with these tracks is that they really are low quality sometimes, except for some which have been restored by fans, even if Ween is probably uninterested in ever playing them live. Some of these simply weren't added to records because they were later repurposed or outright were considered too normal. Some of them were intended for commercials, such as the 6 whole versions of Where Did the Cheese Go, intended for Pizza Hut ads.
Where did cheese go?
I guess I wondered finding these yourself, so I won't spoil the journey too much. All I want to say is that these exist, and you'll have your mind broken yet again by how they can make something incredible and discard it like it was just some bad afternoon where they didn't really get anything good. But isn't it cool how a band can break your mind in so many ways? From confusing you with their style to impressing your expectations throughout the years of discography, there's always something interesting with Ween, which is why I love them, and surely enough, this approach to art resonates with me a lot. I hate the landscape of media that thrives on resorting to what is popular. Movies with the same style of stale humor that may be funny but feel uninspired, shows that try to copy Netflix's latest hit or rely on previously established moneymakers, and music that is ludicrously hidden under waves of artists that normalize removing experimentation. It would be foolish to think creatives like Ween don't exist anymore. They simply have become harder to find. We are really lucky to have Ween being featured in a cultural phenomenon such as SpongeBob, but that's exactly the problem. luck. It is not a concept you can control as a creative. You always have to compromise something if you don't want to exist hoping stuff will happen. This video had me shortening names of tracks in fear of being boring and losing potential retention. This is despite the fact that this video exists solely because I wanted to do it after I noticed I hadn't covered non-game music in my channel since 2020. This is why I hope in the future I can be like SpongeBob creator Stephen Hillenburg. I hope to one day have a cultural phenomenon through which I could showcase new creatives. Just last week I began watching Invincible Season 2 and found myself frowning at the inclusion of Radiohead's Karma Police. Not because I dislike the song, I evidently really like it, but because this was a wasted chance to show people new artists or even new tracks by Radiohead. It's not like Ween was unpopular before being featured in SpongeBob, but I truly do believe I would have taken a lot longer to try the Mollusk out if this incredibly popular piece of media didn't impress me with their work beforehand. And that's what truly blows my mind. We're hearing this video only because of a specific set of circumstances that happened due to chance. There's probably thousands of artists who I haven't heard about and may produce the same impact on me if they somehow convince me to enjoy their sound. It's a probability that may seem huge from our perspective, but it's incredibly small on the large scheme of things. Think about the world where SpongeBob wasn't a hit, or the one where Ocean Man wasn't used. What if Steven never heard Ween, or had his pilot rejected? What about the precise moment in history where Gina and Dina met? The chances are so infinitesimal that you can't help but wonder if they truly are amazing, or if I lied to you at the start of the video when I said I didn't do drugs. Because I do actually take drugs. One's called Ween. The other one's called caffeine. I'm on my 7th cup tonight. You know what, it feels really nice to be doing a video just because I want to and not to appeal to the algorithm. Also, I want to thank everyone from 10,000 subs. This is not like a 10,000 subs special or anything, but I'm very grateful to have you around and I hope I can continue growing this channel even further.
There's a butterfly in my room!